and welcome to episode 3 of Cliffhangers, or What Comes Next, with your host, Gordy McCall. That's me, yours truly. Now, all of the stories that we're going to experience are true. They all come from the world of professional theater. My career has spanned over 45 years. I've been an actor, a director, an artistic director, executive director, playwright, dramaturge, event producer, professor of theater, you name it, I've done it, and I continue to do it and enjoy it tremendously. I feel very fortunate to have a career in the theater here in Canada. Okay, what is a cliffhanger? Cliffhanger is a moment in a story that goes in an unexpected and sudden direction, or comes to a complete halt, leaving you kind of leaning forward going, well, what comes next? What comes next? Well, on this show, I'm going to tell you what comes next. So when we come to the cliffhanger, we're going to stop for a few seconds and give you a chance to see if you can figure out what comes next. And then I'll come back and tell you what happened after the cliffhanger. So I hope you enjoy it. Just before we go to this week's episode, I would like to ask you to subscribe to this channel. All you have to do is press the subscribe button down below the video. It's free. And the like button. If you could do that, we'll get more and more subscribers and be able to tell more and more stories. Okay, so this week's episode. As you know from last week's episode, I'm the founder and first artistic director of the Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan Festival in beautiful downtown Saskatoon. It's now approaching its 40th year. Bravo to everyone who's been involved over the years. Well, this story comes from the festival. In 1986, we decided to do a production of The Tempest, a wonderful play by William Shakespeare. And it's important that you know, for the first few years, we had to move from site to site along the riverbank because of availability and city restrictions, etc. So on the second year, 1986, we were situated on what we called and was known as the snow dump, which is actually right where the festival sits today. Of course, today's festival has a beautiful paved portico and yard, and then there's this tent-like structure over an amphitheater, a cement amphitheater, quite different and quite magnificent, actually. We had our blue and white tent in the second year, which was 60 feet by, 60 feet by, I think, 80 feet long. And people sat on lawn chairs or on the ground. So that's where we were doing The Tempest. Now, The Tempest is a magical play. It's about the sorcerer Prospero, who's been exiled to an island somewhere in the ocean with his daughter because he was accused of doing some things back in what we would consider civilization. And so he was exiled. He was allowed to take his books with him from which he could cast spells, etc. He had with him a series of, or a group of spirits led by the amazing character Ariel, played by Cynthia Dick in our production. And Prospero was played by John Wright, who had played Theseus and Oberon in Midsummer Night's Dream the year before. Okay, so what you need to know is that I thought, we can't just put it on a pretend island because most of the islands in the world have been discovered, have been explored, have been inhabited. So the audience, the contemporary audience, won't think that's very magical, I thought. So I decided to put it on a planet in outer space, which is, in my mind, a form of an island. Now, what if Prospero was exiled to another planet? And what if on that planet, he decided, I think kind of like Mars, you couldn't breathe the air too well, he would live underground, subterranean. And so this seemed to be a good idea. It proved to be, actually. And we created a surface made of red shale of rocks that were red, naturally a reddish, rusty color. And at one end, we made a little, we called it the grotto pool, a little almost like a hot tub at one end. And all you saw when you came in, you walked across the shale, you would see little like ping pong balls floating around the surface. And they were all painted different colors. And the audience sat on two sides along the tent and at one end. And then through the other end, the actors came. But what people didn't know was actors also came up from under the water. It was amazing. Now, we had breathing tubes, I'll call them, big, almost air vents like the smokestacks on old ships. And Ella Jules Verne, they were curved and they were big and they were painted gold. And that was the surface as you came in. That's what you saw. Now, the actors could come onto this shale from the vents, I called them, or dive into them. It was quite dramatic. And that's where Prospero and his gang lived. And when Alonzo and Gonzalo arrived from the other world, all they saw was the shale in these tubes until the play exploded into action. Okay, now I'm going to take you to a particular night in the middle of the run. And on that particular night of a performance, it started to rain. And I'm going to tell you, it was a torrential downpour. And it did not let up, as one might expect. And we were well into the first act. And it got so bad, and we left it, but the audience could not hear a word. The actors couldn't hear each other. They were struggling. I'm going to give you one more detail. Down in the tubes, we had microphones, and we had the sound system set up so that when the characters like Ariel spoke from down there, it was very eerie and surrounded the audience. And the audience loved that. Okay, so you've got electricity at play as well. Finally, I decided this is impossible. They can't hear the actors. The actors can't hear themselves. And also, we're at risk here. Outside the tent, it was lit inside, but it was absolutely pitch black. You couldn't see 3 feet in front of you. So we had to take care of these people, our audience, and of course the performers. So I decided to stop the show. I went onto the surface, the playing surface, and tapped John Wright on the shoulder, and he turned around like he was shocked, unbelievably. What am I doing on stage? And I'm not in the play, but I waved my arms and I said, no, we're cutting. And that's, by the way, that's a theater. That's what we use in the theater when we say we want to cut or stop the action. Okay. So he gets the message, and I shout above the din that we are stopping the show. We'll give everyone rain checks. Haha, very funny because it's raining like crazy. And we'll give them umbrellas to get them out of the tent and a ways along the path, hoping that they all make it home, which they did, thank goodness. Okay, so next, let us get out of the tent. And we all got out of the tent. We went to our trailer. It was called an Atco trailer. It's a big construction trailer, 60 feet by 12 feet wide. And that was our dressing room. And it was about, I'm going to say, 50 feet away from the tent. And we all managed to get there. We had some flashlights and we got in there. And of course, we wanted to make sure everybody was safe. And so I thought, good idea, and it turns out it was, to do a roll call because it was a large group in a confined space and I couldn't quite see everybody. So I started to shout out the names. And what comes next? Be back soon. Well, guess what? One person was missing. And that person was Cynthia Dick, who played Ariel. Oh my gosh, where was she? pitch black, rain coming down torrentially. So myself and a group of the actors said, we've got to find her. Let's get back into the tent. And it occurred to me or someone else, it said, do you think Cindy could hear? You know, she was waiting for her cue, and she was going to come up from one of the tunnels and leap into the space. And that meant if she was waiting for her cue, she was sitting at the bottom of the tunnel on that V, and she was holding a microphone. And that microphone was live. And we knew that water was pouring down those tunnels. What a combination. So we rushed like crazy to the tunnel that we thought she was in. We shone a flashlight down, and Cindy was there, and she looked at us like, what are you doing? I'm in performance. You see, the thing was that Cindy could not hear anything down in that tunnel with the rain and all of that going on. So she was waiting for a visual cue that never came. And I got to tell you, when they call actors troopers, Cynthia is a shining example. She hung in there knowing that it was long past her cue, but she was dutifully waiting for the cue, and then she'd come in. And she knew it was raining. She knew all this stuff was happening. And obviously water was pouring in on her, but she just hung in there. Well, we shut the system down. We got her out of there. And of course, we all had a good laugh. And we love Cynthia to this day for that moment. And it's, I think, quite a signature moment of the festival. And we just thank the stars above and the planets above and whatever is above for making us all safe that night, particularly Cynthia Dick. So there we have water, water everywhere. Okay, don't forget to subscribe and hit that button and hit the like button. And we'll see you next episode for another episode of Cliffhangers, or What Comes Next. And remember, we are our stories. Take care, everyone.